Chapter 12. The Edge of Control. Or it could blow up in our faces, I replied, the caution in my voice palpable. Every step we took felt like we were treading on dangerous ground, and the weight of our plans, of the risks we were taking, hung between us like a storm cloud ready to burst. True, Adrian said, his voice low, that familiar edge of challenge curling in his tone. But that's the risk we take. His words ignited something inside me, a spark of defiance, of determination. I smiled, the flicker of adrenaline mixed with something else, something deeper, more dangerous. Then let's make sure it's worth the risk. I turned toward the door, my head still swimming with thoughts of strategy and uncertainty. But just as I stepped into the hallway, the cool night air brushing against my skin, I felt his hand on my arm, firm but gentle, pulling me back. Juliet. His voice was soft but commanding, and when I turned to face him, the look in his eyes stole the breath from my lungs. The space between us, already thin, seemed to vanish in that moment. His hand, still holding my arm, slid up to my shoulder, the warmth of his touch sending a shiver down my spine. I swallowed hard, my pulse quickening as our eyes met. There was something raw, something magnetic in the way he was looking at me, and before I could even process what was happening, he closed the gap between us. His lips were on mine, firm, demanding, and I melted into him, my thoughts scattering like leaves in the wind. The fire that had been simmering between us for weeks, the tension that had built with every stolen glance, every charged conversation, finally ignited. I felt his hands move to my waist, pulling me closer, and I responded instinctively, my body pressing against his. Every inch of me was alive with sensation, the heat of his touch, the way his breath mingled with mine as we deepened the kiss, and the sheer force of the connection between us. I wrapped my arms around his neck, letting myself fall into him, my mind clouded with desire. His lips moved against mine with a hunger that matched my own, and for a moment, nothing else existed. No plans, no strategies, no risks, just the two of us. His hand slid up my back, and I arched into him, a soft gasp escaping my lips as he pressed me against the wall, his body firm and unyielding. I felt his fingers tangle in my hair, tilting my head back as he kissed me harder, deeper, and my breath hitched, my pulse thundering in my ears. I wanted this. Wanted him. But somewhere in the haze of desire, a voice whispered caution. The edge of control we were standing on was razor thin, and I knew if we took one more step, there'd be no going back. Adrian's lips moved to my neck, and I gasped as I felt the heat of his breath against my skin, his hands roaming my body with an urgency that matched the fire blazing inside me. Every touch, every kiss, sent sparks of electricity through me, making it harder to think, harder to remember why I had to stop this. His hand slid under my shirt, his fingers brushing the bare skin of my waist, and I shivered under his touch, a soft moan escaping my lips. My body ached for more, for the connection that had been building between us, but the voice in the back of my mind grew louder. Adrian, I whispered, my breath coming in ragged gasps. He pulled back slightly, his eyes dark with desire, his breath just as labored as mine. Juliet. His voice was rough, his gaze searching mine, as if asking if we should keep going, if I wanted this as much as he did. And God, I did. But the risks, the stakes, were too high. Not just in the world of power and strategy we had entangled ourselves in, but here, in this moment. If we crossed this line, it would change everything, and I wasn't ready for what that might mean. I pressed my hands against his chest, gently but firmly pushing him back, my heart racing as I tried to catch my breath. We can't, I whispered, my voice trembling with the effort it took to stop. Adrian's brow furrowed, his breath still heavy as he searched my face. Juliet, I know, I interrupted, closing my eyes for a moment as I tried to steady myself. But if we let this go any further. I opened my eyes and met his gaze, my heart aching with how much I wanted him. We'll lose control. For a moment, neither of us moved, the weight of my words hanging in the air between us. His hand stayed on my waist, his touch still warm, still tempting, and I could see the struggle in his eyes, the same conflict I was feeling. Finally, he nodded, stepping back, though his gaze never left mine. "You're right," he said, his voice low, but there was a rawness to it, a vulnerability I hadn't seen before. I nodded, taking a deep breath as I tried to calm the storm raging inside me. The fire between us hadn't died. It was still burning, still simmering just beneath the surface. But for now, we had to pull back. Adrian reached up, gently brushing a strand of hair from my face, and a simple gesture sent a fresh wave of warmth through me. "This doesn't change anything," he said softly, his eyes holding mine. "I still want this. I still want you." I swallowed hard, my throat tight as I nodded. "I know, but we need to be smart." He smiled, that familiar flicker of challenge returning to his eyes. "Since when are we smart about anything?" A laugh bubbled up in my chest, easing some of the tension between us. "Good point." Adrian leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to my forehead, and I closed my eyes, letting myself savor the warmth of his lips on my skin. "We'll wait," he murmured. "But it's not over." I opened my eyes, meeting his intense gaze, and felt the truth of his words settle deep inside me. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. But for now, we had to keep our heads, stay focused on the bigger picture. For now, the fire would have to wait. The days blurred into a whirlwind of strategy meetings, late-night planning sessions, and covert operations. Adrian and I fell into a rhythm, working together seamlessly as we navigated the treacherous waters of our family's legacies. The tension between us simmered just below the surface, a mix of rivalry, distrust, and a strange, unacknowledged bond forming as we uncovered secrets that would shake the very foundations of our families. Adrian had been surprisingly insightful, showing me the intricacies of his world. I had been exposed to the brutal nature of corporate warfare, but I was also learning how to fight back. We had set our sights on a rival firm, Sterling Enterprises, which had been encroaching on both our territories. Every night, we pored over financial documents, client lists, and contracts, searching for vulnerabilities. Each discovery brought us closer, and I felt the walls I had built around my heart begin to crack. Adrian was not the monster I had imagined. He was a man driven by ambition and desire, a man who had his own reasons for wanting to bring down Sterling Enterprises. "Look at this," Adrian said one evening, pointing to a chart on the board. "They've recently lost a major client, which means they're more vulnerable than ever. We can capitalize on that." I leaned in closer, my heart racing as I absorbed the information. "If we can get one of their remaining clients to switch to us, it will send a clear message." Adrian nodded, his gaze flickering to me. "We need to act quickly. I have a contact who might be able to help us infiltrate their ranks." "Infiltrate?" I raised an eyebrow. "What do you have in mind?" "I want you to meet with my friend Jackson. He's got connections and knows the inner workings of Sterling. He can help us gather intel on their operations and any weaknesses we can exploit." "Jackson?" I frowned, feeling a sense of unease. "I don't know him. What if he can't be trusted?" Adrian's expression turned serious. "He's reliable. He understands the stakes, and he has his own reasons for wanting to take Sterling down. You'll be safe with him, I promise." I hesitated, still wary of placing my trust in anyone else. But I knew we couldn't do this alone. If Adrian believed Jackson could help, then perhaps it was worth the risk. "Fine," I said, my voice steadied. "Set up the meeting. But I'll handle this on my own." Adrian smirked, a glimmer of amusement in his eyes. "You've got a lot of fire in you, Juliet. I like that." I rolled my eyes, trying to mask the flutter of nerves in my stomach. Just remember who's in control here. The next day, I found myself in a dimly lit cafe on the outskirts of the city, waiting for Jackson. My heart raced with anticipation and apprehension. Adrian had given me a brief rundown of who Jackson was, a former employee of Sterling Enterprises who had been let go under dubious circumstances. He had a grudge, and that made him an asset. As I sipped my coffee, I scanned the cafe, trying to spot the man I had never met. The bell above the door jingled, and a tall, rugged figure entered. Jackson was just as Adrian had described. Ruggedly handsome with tattoos peeking out from under his sleeves, a magnetic presence that drew attention without effort. He scanned the room before his gaze landed on me. I waved him over, feeling a mix of excitement and caution. "Juliet," he said as he approached, a slight grin on his face. "Nice to finally meet you." "Thanks for coming," I replied, gesturing for him to take a seat. "Adrian spoke highly of you." "Did he?" Jackson chuckled, settling into the chair across from me. "Hope he didn't scare you away." I smiled, trying to put him at ease. "Not yet." He leaned back, crossing his arms, his eyes narrowing slightly. "So what's the plan?" I took a deep breath, diving straight into the details. "We need information on Sterling. Any weaknesses, vulnerabilities, anything we can exploit. Adrian believes you can help us gather intel." Jackson's expression turned serious. "You're aiming for something big. What's in it for you?" I hesitated, weighing my words carefully. "Power. Control. I want to protect my family's legacy." He nodded, his gaze piercing as if he were sizing me up. "And what about Adrian? What's his angle?" "Adrian and I are working together," I replied, my voice firm. "This isn't just about him. He wants to take down Sterling, too. Our families have been at odds for years, and this is our chance to gain the upper hand." Jackson raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "A partnership, huh? That's dangerous territory." "Trust me, I know," I said, my voice steady. "But we're both determined to see this through. The question is whether you're in or out." He leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table. "I have my own reasons for wanting to see Sterling fall. That you should know, I don't play nice." I smiled, feeling a flicker of hope. "Neither do I." We spent the next hour discussing strategies and potential weaknesses within Sterling. Jackson proved to be resourceful, revealing connections and insights that would give us the advantage we needed. As we talked, I found myself warming to him, despite my initial reservations. "Adrian trusts you," I said, a hint of surprise in my voice. "Does he?" Jackson asked, his expression playful. "That's rare. He's a hard guy to read." "Trust me, I know," I replied, my voice laced with frustration. "But this is different. He believes in what we're trying to accomplish." "Good," Jackson said, leaning back with a smirk. "Then you might have a shot at pulling this off." As our conversation continued, I felt a sense of camaraderie building. Jackson was more than just a pawn. He was a player in this dangerous game, and having him on our side felt like a significant victory. Just as we finished discussing the logistics of our plan, I glanced at the clock. I had to get back. Adrian would be expecting me. "Thank you for your time, Jackson," I said, standing up and reaching for my purse. "This has been enlightening." He stood, a sly grin on his face. "Just remember, if you need anything, information, backup, whatever, I'm your guy." I nodded, feeling a strange sense of relief wash over me. "I will. I promise." As I walked out of the cafe, my mind raced with possibilities. With Jackson on our side and Adrian's cunning, we might finally have a chance to reclaim what was ours. But I also knew I had to remain vigilant. This partnership was still fragile, and the stakes had never been higher. With Adrian waiting for me back at the penthouse, I steeled myself for the next stage of our plan. The game was shifting, and I was determined to play my part, no matter the cost.